Welcome to Fran's Friends. The month of June, I'm going to dedicate the entire month to the basics of bear making. When I started the website in January, I worked through a couple of projects, going through techniques of how to cut out patterns, etc., and to put your project together. So what I'm going to do is I've got several tutorials on the website on these different techniques, but I'd like to do a review of the basics and the basics of bear making. So number one, for beginners, it's always so important not to pick a project that is a little over your head. Pick something that's easy, that's fun to put together, so that you can accomplish something and not be overstressed. So you can start off with easy patterns. You pick the size that you want. You can downsize patterns. You can increase the size of the pattern. But also you have to think about what the purpose of the pattern or the bear is. Is it something that you're wanting to give to a child? Then you have to really think about safety issues. If it's an art doll, then you can, pretty well do anything you want to embellish your projects. But basics, beginners start off simple. Number two, pick the fabrics. There's a million types of fabrics out there, colors and, designs that make just unbelievable bear projects. So some of the fabrics that you can use is cotton, felt, fleece, fur, like faux fur, or even mohair, which again is extremely expensive, recycled fabrics, blue jeans, old shirts, old skirts and blouses and suits and that kind of thing. And even my favorite is t-shirt fabric. But when you're picking and using a fabric, always make sure that you stabilize your fabrics with adhesive interfacings or underlinings so that you're going to get the best quality in what you're working with. It's, no point, using just a piece of cotton and nothing. It turns out floppy. You want something that has a substantial body to it. Number four, pattern placement. I am a real firm believer in not wasting an inch of fabric. Fabric these days isn't cheap, and it's really important to utilize the pattern pieces so that you make the best benefit for the fabric that you have. Now also, one of the big things with when you're doing a bear, if you're cutting out the bear and you're using a fur, always make sure that the direction you're going with the grain and that your fur is going downwards. So if you have a head, you don't want the fur going, keeping it down and not having it going up to the sides. So those are important things to really take into consideration. The other thing too, when you're cutting out your pieces and your placement of your pattern, don't forget that you're going to have a right leg and a left leg, and you have to reverse the pattern piece. So an easy way to do it is to do one side, say for instance the right side, all at once, and then turn your pattern piece over and do the other side. That way you're not going to run into a problem of having two right feet or two right arms. And it's really hard when you've got such a limited piece of fabric. Specifically, you don't want to make any mistakes when you're using mohair. So it does give you a little bit more leeway when you do it that way, because you're not going to be tending to make more mistakes. Now, number 5, always, when you get a pattern, there's always markers on it where you're going to insert for your legs, where your leg's going to sit, placement of the eyes on some particular projects. So always It's easier to mark your pattern pieces so that you can go back and have the proper spots for, for instance, like adjoining the arm to the side of the body of your bear. So that's a really, really important thing. I didn't do it at first, and you learn your lessons as you go along. Now, when you're sewing, number 6, baste your pattern pieces. Don't just take the pattern pieces when you've got curves and different shapes and just take it to your machine, because you're gonna venture down the road of making dreadful errors. So baste them together, and I always use the basic blanket stitch with heavier duty, almost like an upholstery fabric or upholstery thread. And also when I'm dealing with finishing off, like the back ends of after you've stuffed your bear, finishing this, like finishing off the legs, is I always use the ladder stitch. And it takes a little while to get used to doing these stitches, but they are really well worth it. So now, sewing the pieces together when you are taking your pieces to the machine, there's a bunch of little techniques and tricks. Always sew your seams twice. Now, if you're stuffing and you've got one seam and it's not sewn twice, it may fray and come apart. So it just gives it extra body and strength for when you're putting stuffing into the pieces of your bear. Now, next, go back and forth on all of your openings so that when you go to stuff it, it's not going to come apart at the very edge of that seam. So back and forth on both sides. Again, I learned by making the mistake of not doing that, and it would just come apart, and that's not a fun thing to happen. So start when you are on your machine, don't start at the very edge. If you wanted to sew this seam, start a little bit down and then backstitch, and then down. And then what I do when I'm sewing is I just turn it around and then stitch back along the same seam line. And that really, really helps in producing your arms and legs and heads, etc. Now, use small stitching on your machine for making your bears. And I believe I use about a 2.4, which is a relatively small stitch. I think you can go down to about a 2, but my machine, it's a perfect stitch at 2.4. And seam allowances on most of my projects, it's about 1/4 inch seam allowance. And again, when I do the seam allowance, I always, again, double stitch on those. Okay, now number 8, stuffing. The one thing with stuffing is you can use pretty well anything, wool. I use mostly polyester fiber from the pillowcases that I buy at either the dollar store or Walmart, and then just tear the pillowcases apart and pull out the stuffing, and that's what I generally use. You can use cotton balls. I've seen people use one recently was Mama Roar used dryer lint, but it depends on who you'd be giving it to. But all kinds of different things you can use. And the one big tip when you're stuffing any of your parts, never stuff it and close it. Stuff it, leave it, and then go back, because you'll definitely be able to get more stuffing into it. And the more stuffing you can get in, the more stability you'll have, and the better outcome to your bear. Now, joints. Joints are an interesting thing, and I did a video on using upcycled supplies like bottle caps and wooden discs, tin lids, CDs. But what I've come up with just recently is the pill containers. My husband takes pills, and he had this particular one. And what I did was it had a little insert that fits to screw onto the cap of the base of the bottle. And I keep these now, and I use them for making my joints. Here's like this one here. I have two of them, the same size, and these ones here are caps from the milk or the silk drink that my husband uses. And I use them, wash them out, put a hole in either sides, and then I'll put a nut and a screw and a bolt, and there's your joint. So again, go back to that video that I did earlier on. I think it was maybe January or February or something like that. So other things that you can use is for jointing. You can use the wooden discs with cotter pins, and I'm not a fan of cotter pins. I don't think they give you a good enough stability for your joints. Again, the screws and the nuts. You can also use buttons for closure. Like on this particular bear, I'm going to close, I'm going to attach the arm by just using a nice wooden button. And I thought that would be a little bit different. So I think that would be kind of cute. Now, I've got 8 buttons for my 2 bears, and that will tie the 2 bears together as well. So buttons can be used. You can use just thread. Just depends on what you're going to be doing with your bear, but generally just sticking. But I do like the joint method, but I also have used attaching the head to the body by just using a big button that sits on the back. So eyes also, you can use buttons for eyes. You can use glass eyes, buttons, glue on eyes. It just depends on what feature that you want. And I just use all kinds of different ones. I try and gather. But buttons are even, you could use like the eyes on my fish. I use yo-yos with buttons. And lots of little techniques like that. Now, but the best part of all of this is that number 10 is once your bear is all put together, you have a bear. Simple little bear, but he's got no character. So what you do is you give your bear some character with the use of the embellishments. And I'm going to have some fun with these two. I'm going to have a boy and a girl bear, and I'm going to use the nautical theme and a hat, and then she's going to, with the, as the first mate pattern that I'm using, which I downsized the pattern from Lisa Pay, is called the first mate. And he's got the little sailor suit on. So she'll have a sailor suit top on her dress. And then we'll embellish and really fancy them up. Now, one thing I will go back to is when you are attaching your arms and legs, if you're using buttons, you don't have the same maneuverability that, like this is a joint, so you can turn the head in different directions. But if you're using buttons, it gives you much less stability. So you pretty well need to position it where you want it. As an example, I haven't decided whether I'm going to have her stand with her dress or whether I'm going to have her sitting. So you have to make those types of decisions with buttons and that kind of thing if that's what you're going to use to attach your limbs to your body base. But that's about it. So again, as I say, June is going to be a good month for bears. We'll come up with all kinds of different ideas. I did mention in my June beginning of the month video that I'm going to use a book called 2-Hour Teddy Bears, and that's the real basics of bear making to start with. And if we have time, maybe we can get into some more memory bears. But I'll also do a short video on the different bears that I've actually made over the last couple of years. So again, thanks for watching and enjoy.